Shemai Pretty and welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin Anwin for anyone who's new here, and let's get back into building in PlanElt Zoo. And I'm starting my first habitat for the conservation pack today, and I'm going to be doing the Przewalski's horse. I really hope I finally got the pronunciation right for that, but just in case, I'm going to carry on calling it the wild horse for the rest of the video. And this habitat is inspired by a Grand Designs build again. A couple built their house from a ruin. And ruins are kind of common in the more wild areas, rural areas around the UK. They would just be like an old building in the middle of a field, just completely left. And because these are wild horses, I thought it'd be nice to go with something that could possibly look like it had been left, that the horses kind of just used it as their shelter. Now, because of conservation efforts, someone has come and tried to modernize this shelter to give them more of a hard shelter, like a safer area for them to sleep. And I just thought it was a really cool concept with the old ruins shape with like a modern top to it. So they kept the shape of the ruins on the bottom where it would have been. I really wanted to see whether I could recreate something like that in PlanElt Zoo. I'm using the Europe pack for the ruins part because of the damage decals. That is going to play a really big part in trying to make it look more ruined. And I still wanted to go with the conservation theme. So for the roof, I wanted to add solar panels. And wouldn't it be really cool if we just had an object of the solar panel that it would still give off some power, but not as much as the large solar panel. A small object that will still give off some power, but it would only really give off power for the building it's attached to, maybe? So I wanted nice big modern glass windows for the larger parts of the building, and then I went with slim rectangular windows for the shorter part. I didn't really want to use too many decals because that would just add lots of objects into the game, so I wanted to add in some of the triangular pieces, play around with that, and play around with the wooden panels as well to make sure that I'm not using as many objects but still covering a good amount of space for the rock to create the ruin shape. So it's not just going to be a half and half thing. I want it to look like it would be a ruin. So I'm going in with some of the panels and some of the triangular pieces to create different shapes instead of it being a straight line. And I also kind of wanted a bit of a depth in the structure, so there'd be a definition between the stone and the wood. So I split the walls, the stone walls, from the main building group, so I could then use advanced move to move the walls slightly in front of the wood panels. I only went for like a half depth, so they would still overlap each other, but the stone does actually stick out a little bit from the wood paneling now. And I was having a look at the roof, which I don't normally do roofing until right at the end, so I'm glad I played around with it to start with, because I didn't like the normal pitched roof. So I went with like a barn style roof with the two different roof pitches. So a more steeper one to start with, and then a shallower one, I think it's 4 to 2 meter roof pitch, just to make it look a little bit more like a barn, have like a barn hint to it without making it look completely like a barn and making it look like a petting zoo, farmyard animal. The Przewalski's horse, the wild horse, is not a farmyard animal. It's not actually genetically linked to the horse that we know of. The Przewalski's horse has 33 chromosomal pairs, whereas the modern domestic horses have 32, indicating they became genetically separate long ago. So it is classified as a separate species to the modern domestic horse, so I didn't want to make it too pony-like. I wanted to line the roof, some edging pieces to make it feel a little bit more modern, maybe a little bit more industrial with the metal texture. And to link the colour scheme to the entrance building, the potting shed, I've gone with blue shades, and the solar panels also are kind of blue, so that fits in nicely with the colour scheme as well. If you haven't seen the potting shed entrant video, I'll link that in the iCards, but I don't normally do this roof edging. It's usually quite fiddly and it's kind of irritating to do most of the time, so I tend not to do it, but I think it gives a more of a pop. And onto the damage decals now to make it look a lot more like a ruins than just some oddly shaped stone walls. And I'm just using the decals for like edging to create more of a rustic, ruined type texture. And again, I just want it to look kind of random, not completely mirrored at the same time. Like, I want to make sure that all of these different textures and different patterns don't reflect each other, because a stone building wouldn't crumble in the same way on each of the different walls. But I really enjoy using these damaged pieces for different shapes like this. Like, I did the same for the abandoned warehouse rave, but I had a bit of a shock last week. Last Tuesday I was about to start building this actually. And I switched Steam on and I saw that the developers were on a live stream, and that live stream included my own build. So imagine my surprise when I switch on Steam, I see developer broadcast and I see my build. It's been a week and I'm still not over it, which is kind of embarrassing, because watching the live stream I did see Elt did actually say that they watched my video. But yeah, for the community zoo, for a pride themed build for Pride Month, they picked my build that I built last year, the Pride float. So embarrassed, but also like really happy about it, of course. Really grateful that my build was selected to be a part of the community zoo. If you haven't seen that, I'll link the live stream in the description. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing all the damage and the different shapes. I love getting creative like this. And once I was done with the ruins shape and I was happy with the ruins shape, I put some glass in the window holes that I'd already put in, and I wanted these to feel really modern, so I just went with a plain glass panel, no patterns or anything, so it barely looks like a window. I decided to use the conservation pack wood for the window frames, just to use a bit of the conservation pack. It felt strange for my first conservation pack build or habitat build not actually using any of the new conservation items. It's still like a conservation theme, of course, reusing old building materials like the ruins and using renewable energy with the solar panels, but I did actually want to use some of the new conservation pack items as well. And I went with the navy dark blue colour to match in with the roof detailing on the edge, and it stands out quite nicely against the grey stone texture as well. I did go with like a few different heights and shapes for the smaller windows, so the window frames are a little bit more fiddly to obviously build because I didn't make any of the windows the same shapes. To make the stone look more like ruins, I wanted to add a few of the mossy decals, again from the Europe pack, to add a little bit more plant life, age it a little bit more as well, with the bits of moss and bits of greenery. Want to add in plant life and things like that, because that obviously goes with the conservation theme as well. I went quite heavy on the plant life for the entrance building. And speaking of plant life, I left a rooftop space to add like a little rooftop garden. And when I was looking at all of the different inspiration photos for my allotment and potting shed, I saw this really unusual stack of potted plants. And I thought that would be a really fun thing to create with the new painted pots. It's just a little bit more fun than having it one pot, having them all stacked higgledy-piggledy. There's a name for it for a cake, but like having the different angles, topsy-turvy kind of pots. It's just fun ways to level up your planters, like these topsy-turvy potted plants and adding in different small flowers in the different pots, recoloring the classic flowers to make the flowers stand out more against the different pots. And of course, in the last video in the potting shed, I used the tire wheel on the wall to create a wall planter with the classic plants, and I also created a wooden pallet flower planter out of the Conservation Park wood panels, copying the wooden pallet from the Australia pack. Even if you just want to use the regular planters or the regular pots, there's always ways of customizing them to make them fit your builds better, using FlexiColor or even using the same colors from a color scheme like I have with the different shades of blue. But sometimes it can get kind of boring using the same planter. But if you want to customize the planters a little bit as well, make them fit better into your zoo, level them up in any way, add some of the miscellaneous wall signs. So for my conservation planter, I use some of the new conservation wall signs, like the ladybirds and the bees and the sunflowers, to make the very plain planter a little bit more cheerful. And I also did kind of want to see what the ruins would look like without the modernized part on the top. So after I was finished with the building, I deleted all of my hard work just to see what the ruins would look like on their own, and then just pressed undo. Got it to all come back nicely. Of course, I didn't actually lose any of my work. A shallow pool that I created to show that the wetlands map had dried out and the water levels had dropped. I thought it looked like a really nice little pond, like a wild pond. So I grabbed some of the foliage that was already on the map from the Karst Mire map. I added some of the reeds and stuff on the edges because I learned from another Grand Designs episode that plant life in ponds can actually keep the water cleaner. The reeds are a natural filter. And then I grabbed my wildflower beds from my entrance building to add them on some of the edges. But to make this planter look slightly different to the wildflower beds that I'd already placed for the entrance building, I've made this into more of a rockery. Maybe these rocks were saved from the ruins, so they've been reused now. These are some of the rocks that were left from the crumbling ruins, and they've just been placed nicely along the flower beds to reuse them. Upcycling and reusing items is going to be like a big focus point for my conservation builds, and it's really cute. I love a little rockery. I've got a little rockery in my back garden, which I love watching how the rockery changes throughout the different seasons, so it's nice to recreate something like that in PlanElt Zoo, and just to kind of make it feel a little bit more overgrown and a little bit more wild and natural. I just grabbed some of the new grass, Yorkshire fog. It sounds like a tea, a flavour of tea. And just dotted some of the grass here, there and everywhere around the ruins. Like they're like little patches of grass where the horses might have left that long to graze on, maybe. The more forested area up the top is going to have a lot more foliage and a lot more different plant life. That's going to be where they would graze, I would assume. It's got like the longer grass and the different bushes and plants, which is nice because this is where the guests would have seen, will see the wild horses more, with all of the different enrichment items up there hidden in amongst the trees. I actually wanted to add in some education boards and conservation boards. I've not been the best at doing this in this zoo, but hey, you gotta start somewhere, really, haven't you? So I thought my tulips board that I created for my Europe part of the season zoo would go really nicely in with the conservation theme because they're flowers. And then in between each of the education boards I put a conservation board for the massive conservation theme. And to get the best education with the conservation boards for your guests, it's best not to have the same topic next to each other. So if you want one for the climate change, you wouldn't want another one next to it for climate change. You'd want that to be something else, like deforestation. But the animal talks are also a really great way to up education ratings for your guests, and of course the education speakers and the education boards. Having the speakers, it allows for a bigger area where your guests would be walking to hear the education, whereas they won't necessarily always stop to look at an education board. That is pretty much it for this habitat build. And now onto the Pretties. You can see the wild horses walking around their habitat in the forested area, and of course the converted ruins barn. But it was really fun. It was a really different sort of style that I don't normally do, but I just got really inspired by grand designs and I couldn't help myself. I thought the Przewalski's horse would be a perfect animal to create a build like this for. But you have to let me know what you think in the comments, and also let me know what animal I should build a habitat for next. Let me know if you saw the live stream for the community zoo and you recognize my build or you recognize my name. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it off there. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, and if you haven't already and you'd like to, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. I upload speed builds on Wednesdays and shorts tutorials on Saturdays. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you next time. Goodbye!